All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good week. I know we hadn't had office hours the last couple of days here, so glad to be back, feeling refreshed and ready to rumble here. So, just want to go over a few quick ground rules. If you would, please just shoot me over a message. Just let me, if a couple of people, just let me know that you can hear me. Just make sure that the sound is good and everything. Um, but just wanted to get started here with a few ground rules. So first of all, number one, I'm coming at you live from my house. I do have a dog. I do have a wife that's going to be coming home pretty soon. So the door might open or something like that. You might hear a beeping sound. If I've got to go do something real quick, then I'll be right back as soon as I can. So don't be alarmed if I disappear or something like that. The other thing is I'm only going to be answering questions that are being asked during the office hours. So not I haven't looked at it before I got in here, but if you ask a question a half hour before we started, or 20 minutes, or 15 minutes, or 5 minutes before we got started, and you're sitting here waiting to get it answered, it may not get answered in time. And I got some feedback recently that was sent over through support. Somebody mentioned that I didn't answer, or I think they said that I answered a question, or I said that I had already answered the question, so I'm not going to answer again. So if you ask a question, or if somebody else asks a question and it's basically the same question that you just asked, I'm not going to re-answer a question over and over again. So if somebody asks me, the same question at 10 minutes in, I'm not going to answer the same question if it's asked again 45 minutes later. So that's just so I can answer as many questions as I can. These are being archived now. So if you go to the office hours highlights and you scroll down there, you can watch archived office hours. So if you do show up later and I say, hey, I already answered that question earlier, you can just later on the next day go and watch the archived office hours and see your question being answered. The other thing I want to mention is that if you ask a question that is something that can easily be solved or fixed or answered by a video on the website. For example, if somebody asks me how to fix my slice, I'm going to send you to the Never Slice Again section, and that will cover everything you need to know about fixing your slice. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started here. And also I want to mention, I answer as many questions as I possibly can. A person, it seemed like they were upset that I didn't get to answer their question. Well, they may have asked the question at, 15 minutes until it was over, and unfortunately sometimes I don't get those questions that are asked at the end, because it is just an hour. I wish I could sit here all day and answer questions all day long, but in order for me to do that, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the other things that I have to do, and we probably wouldn't be able to charge as little as we do for the service. So keep that in mind here, and we'll go ahead and get started. Go to Bernard. So I'm going to start with Bernard C. Posted his question about 10 minutes ago, but I'll go ahead and start with that one. So if you asked your question before Bernard C., for example, if you're Doug D. or below, 24 minutes ago asked a question, go ahead and post your question again, and post your questions in the beginning. If you want to make sure that your questions get answered, post it, in the first half hour. And those will always get answered typically if they're posted in the first half hour. So I'll go ahead and start here with Bernard C. And he says, when teeing off, I hit the ball solidly, but consistently push the ball to the right. It is not a curve, but a straight shot. I just can't seem to correct this. Help, please. So one thing to always keep in mind, the ball is always going to start in mostly the direction of the club face. So if the ball is starting to the right, that means that the face is open. If there's no curvature to it, that means that you're also swinging in that direction. So the ball is always going to start mostly in the direction of the club face and then curve away from the club path. But if your club face and your club path are in the same direction, there's not going to be any curvature to it. So it sounds like you're just swinging too much to the inside, and you're just aligning your club face to the direction that you're swinging. So the first thing I would try to do is I'd try to get your club path moving more to the left. I'm assuming that you're right-handed, but I would try to feel like you're swinging more kind of over the top. I know that seems counterintuitive to swing over the top, but essentially a lot of what golf is adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So right now, you feel like you're swinging straight down the target. That's the path that your club is moving in. But in reality, you're kind of swinging out to the right. So you want to feel like you're swinging to the left to counteract that. And if you actually start pulling some shots or hitting some big slices or something like that, balls will start to the left and curve to the right, then I would just ease off of that feeling. Feel like you're not coming over the top as much, just a little bit more to try to get that straightened out. If you ever want to learn how to control these things a lot more and to be able to have a better awareness of your club path and basically understand what's happening with your ball flight, why the ball starts left and goes right, or the curvature and all these things, what happens to the golf ball and what happens with the golf ball and what's happening at impact to make that happen, I would highly recommend doing our ball striking masterclass. You're going to learn exactly what's going on at impact and how to improve your awareness and your ability to get the ball to do what you want it to do. I highly recommend that. We're going to be offering enrollment into that sometime in this month. So sometime in the next 3 weeks, be looking out in your email for an opportunity to enroll. We only offer this every month or two. So if you're interested, make sure that you get in there and go through the program. Thanks for the question, Bernard. So Paul H says, I have trouble figuring out which is a fade and which is a draw. So a fade, let's say, I'm going to assume you're right-handed again. So a fade is a ball that curves to the right, and draw is a ball that curves to the left. And it'd be opposite if you're left-handed. So if a lot of times people say, if it's a lot of curve, like too much curve, that's a slice to the right. And then if it's too much curve to the left, that would be a hook. So usually, your fades will have 5 to 15 yards, 0 to 15 yards of curvature. If it's more than that, you can consider that kind of a slice, essentially. So, I mean, that's not a cut and dry thing, but that's kind of the amount. You're not going to be, if you're curving the ball more than 10, 15 yards, if you're curving the ball more than that, you're losing distance because you're hitting the ball too much with a glancing blow to get that ball to curve like that. Dennis N says, kept hitting behind the ball or thin ball when I'm chipping. So the biggest reason why I see people that have trouble with chipping is that they play the ball too far back in their stance. So I don't know if that's what's happening with you, and this will be you can learn all this stuff in our chipping mastery section. But if I have a wedge here and a ball, grab a ball. So if you play this ball really, really far back in your stance, this is what I see a lot of times, is this ball is way back on the back foot. And, the thinking is right here is because we want to get that ball first contact, which you can a lot. But the problem is that your timing, because you're chopping down into the ball, your timing has to be pretty perfect, because if you chop down into the ball and you hit an inch behind the ball, that ball's going nowhere. And a lot of times what you'll do is, because you've chunked so many, you'll do this. You'll come up and you'll do this action, and you'll end up kind of hitting it thin, just to kind of counteract that. So what I like to do is I like to put that, what you could do is just kind of do some swings with no ball there at all and just brush the turf. Just brush the turf back and forth and kind of see where that club is coming in and brushing the turf. So you can see that in the middle of that, that's about right there. That'd be a pretty good place to have the ball, because now I can take a swing and I'm going to hit that pretty good there. So that basically in the middle of the stance is basically where I'd like to see that. That's where I see it most of the time. So that's what I'd be looking for sure. I would also recommend going through our chipping mastery section, working through there and getting a good feel, going through all the drills to get a good idea for that. Excuse me, let me get a drink here real quick. All right, so James S says, what do you recommend to be able to strike the ball higher on the face without using a tee? More forward shaft lean at impact. Also, when is the next ball striking masterclass going to start? So I answered that ball striking masterclass question just a second ago. Just be on the lookout in the next 3 weeks. It's going to be sometime this month. I don't know exactly the date, sometime in the next 3 months. We are going to offer it by the end of this month. So just be on the lookout for that. And then for hitting it higher on the face. So there's going to be some situations where you just can't get the strike higher on the face. So for example, if you play a course that has really tightly mown fairways, like the ball just kind of sits down, it doesn't, it's almost like it's on a plane of glass. The only way you're going to get that ball higher on the face is with forward shaft lean. It's like what you said, because if I have the ball here, so you can see this. So this is, we call this kind of a shortly mown fairway. If I have no forward shaft lean, you can see where my strike's going to be on the lower part of the face. But now if I have more forward shaft lean, you can see where that strike goes up a couple grooves. So that is one way, getting more forward shaft lean. But other than that, if you're on a tighter mown fairway, it's going to be really, really tough. Like here in Florida, most of the greens or most of the fairways are pretty tightly mown. You're not going to be able to get the club under it very much. But I know I played a lot of golf in the Midwest, United States, and a lot of, Kentucky bluegrass fairways, Bermuda, where that ball, it's plush, it's sitting up really, really high on the grass, and you're getting that higher contact on there. So that's about the only other way, is to have, basically where the ball is sitting up on the grass to get that strike higher on the face. That's why you probably seen maybe pictures on Google where you've seen tour players where they have the wear spots on their irons. Well, that wear spot is pretty low on the face. We're talking, 3-4 grooves up would be like the center. Well, that's actually not, the center of the club face. That's just as good as they're going to be able to get it. The center of the club face is exactly where you'd think it would be on the club. It's about right up here. It's probably, I would say that's about 5-6 grooves up would be the dead center on this wedge. So, and for other clubs like, higher iron where the face isn't as tall like it is here on the wedge, it may be less grooves up, but basically, it's based on the CG of the club, and that pretty much puts you right in the center of the face. That's going to give you that perfect flush feeling contact. Whereas if you're hitting balls off of a really, really tight fairway, tightly mown fairway, now the good part is about hitting a ball off a tightly mown fairway is that there's nothing getting in between that golf ball in the club. Not really much at all, as long as you're getting that ball first contact. But even a lot of times, even if you're getting that ball first contact, you're getting some blades of grass in there, even though it's not impeding the club at all. You're getting some blades of grass in there in the club face, and you just don't get as much spin. Spin on those adds, makes the club face a little slippery and things like that. So things to keep in mind when you're hitting shots. But forward shaft lean is going to be the number on any lie. That's going to be the number one bet to get the strike higher on the face. So James, thanks for letting me know you can hear me. Also, Mike, MOB, thank you. All right. So Mark Case here says, straight line release. If you maintain your spine angle and throw the club out to 1 o'clock, will that momentum take you into the straight line release? If you maintain, I guess I'm not sure what you mean in reference out to 1 o'clock. I'm not sure what you mean there. If you wouldn't mind, Mark, kind of re-straighten your question, because I don't know if you mean 1 o'clock based on I'm standing on a clock, or 1 o'clock in my swing. So 1 o'clock would be actually like right here. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. So if you would, clarify that for me if you would, and I'll do my best to answer it for you. Bernard C. All right. So Bernard C., I answered that question right in the beginning there. So again, if you're kind of late to the party here, go ahead, and it was one of the first questions. I think your question was the first one that I answered. So go in there and watch the archived one. I'll try to get that up right after we get done here, and you can take a look at that. Edward M says, still can't quite take the divot front of the ball. Plus, all of my iron shots go up high. I can't seem to generate lower flight. So this is from releasing the club early. So the reason why you can't take a divot is because you're releasing that club early. When you release the club early instead of out in front, like we talked about in the straight line release, if you release that club early, what happens is that club is shallowing out late. So basically you kind of have to pick that ball off the turf. So what you need to do is you need to get that club releasing more out in front. So that starts in several areas. So number one is you want to make sure that your spine angles are good. If you are vertical at impact, meaning you're coming into the ball and you're like this, your spine angle is straight up and down, you're going to release that club basically right into the ground, and you're not going to be able to release that club out in front. And you want to be more angled away. So you want to make sure that you're angled away with your spine. If we go middle of the hips, middle of the shoulders here, you want to be angled away about 18, 25 degrees, somewhere in there when you're drawing that on there from face on. So that's number one. You want to make sure your spine angles are good. That's what sets you up to get into the right position to release that club out in front. So that's number one. If you're doing that, if your spine angles are looking good, look at your lag. Are you releasing this? Are you releasing this club from the top? Meaning you're at the top here and then you start casting the club. Well, if that's happening, you have very little chance to release this club out in front. So you've got to generate lag in the downswing. About to this point here, when that lead arm's parallel to the ground, it's going to be about to that point, or even a little bit further than that, it's good. But you don't want it to be releasing from here because that's going to make it release early. So make sure that you're generating lag in the downswing. That's number two. Number three is you want to make sure that you're shallowing out the club. So if you look here in this club, you look from down the line, and you see that this club, the butt end of the club is pointing inside of the golf ball. Well, if that's happening, basically what you have to do is you have to stand up as you come into the ball to get that, basically not to chunk it into the ground, not to shove this club into the ground or come way over the top. It's usually one or the other. So make sure that you're shallowing out this club, get this butt end of the club pointing at the golf ball, or even a little bit outside of the golf ball is good too. And then get that club face squaring up earlier. This is the move section. So if your spine's good, your lag's good, go to the move, make sure that you're shallowing out the club and getting that club face to square up. Those are really the big ones. Also, straight line release. You know, if you're doing all those things, it just means that your hands are used to squaring up the club. It's kind of the move too, but your hands are used to squaring up the club. So if you look at impact and your trail hand is straight because you're trying to square up the face by going like that. If you look at every tour player, their trail hand, it's bent back like this at impact. It's not like that. Most amateurs, it's like that. So that's your straight line release section. You want that to be straight when the club is released out here, not at impact. That means you're releasing it too early. So that's where you're going to need to go. It's not an easy thing to do. Anything that you do, any swing changes in the downswing are going to be tough. So it's not going to be like you're going to be able to go out to the range in an hour and you're going to be able to start releasing that club perfectly out in front. It takes time, energy, a lot of reps, and work to get that done. So I just take your time with it, try to get better with it every time that you go out and work on it. And then over time, all those little improvements are going to add up to big improvements, and you're going to start hitting the ball quite a bit better. So I'd be looking at those pieces in that order too. I wouldn't be going in any different order than that. All right, so let's keep moving here. So Sam M says, should you have wrist lag when chipping or hitting short pitch shots? So that's a good question. I don't think you should try to keep your wrists like super rock solid or rigid or anything like that. You basically, now with a chip, you don't want to be like because you're not going for power, right? So with a chip or a pitch shot, it's more about control. So I would do with what you can control. So if I were to not have any lag at all, my swing would just be this, right? That's a lot. That's kind of hard to do. You can maybe do it in a chip shot, but I still like to have just a little bit of give, just a little bit of lag. That way I can make sure, because a lot of times, no matter what you do, or even if you don't feel like it, if you don't have a little bit of hinge, you're almost always, because the momentum of the club head, this mass of the club head's wanting to fly forward, you're almost always going to kind of flip the club forward. So you may as well have a little hinge in there so that you can make sure that you have a little bit of forward shaft lean and stable impact to make sure that you're getting a good solid contact on the ball. So I would just have just a little bit. I wouldn't try to do go like this and then release it, because that's just you're not gonna have as much control doing that. Now it's okay from here because you're gonna be feeling that club head all the way down and be able to square that up. There's gonna be a lot more speed there. But with the chip or pitch shots, I mean, just go and look at any tour player. You go to YouTube and search tour players' pitch shots or things like that. Look at what their hands are doing. You can see they're pretty solid, but it's not completely rigid. It's not just the arms and the club are one piece, kind of like when you're putting. There's a little bit of hinge in there and a little bit of hinge through as well. So yes, to answer your question in short, yes, you want to have a little bit of lag when you're pitching and chipping, but I wouldn't, not like you would in your normal full swing. It's just going to be a little bit of hinge and unhinge as you're coming through. Larry K says, I got the flat ball to practice chipping. When hit properly, how should it fly? They're pretty inconsistent, I would say. They're not meant. How they fly is not important as far as using those. And if you're not familiar with what the flat ball is, I was thought I might have one sitting around, but I don't. Flat ball is actually, it's an awesome training aid. It's a really, really cheap training aid. I think it's maybe $10, so you can get 6 of them. And basically, it's the size of a golf ball. It's almost like a little rubber coaster. It's flat. It's only about 1/4 inch thick. It's the same diameter as a golf ball. It's white. And basically, what you do is you put them on the ground, and you can do some variability training. This is one of my favorite drills for ground contact. So let's pretend that this is a flat ball here. And this golf ball, let's pretend it's a flat ball and it's only a 1/4 inch thick and it's laying flat on the ground there. So I can do some variability training, not necessarily just for chipping, but for everything. I don't really use this for chipping much, but for full swings, what I like to do is I like to do some swings where I come down, and this is best used on a mat or a piece of carpet or something that's flat so that it can lay flat on there. If you have grass where it's really, really short and it can lay flat on there, that's even better. It wouldn't work in rough or really, really tall fairways or anything like that. But essentially, I'll do some variability training where I'm coming in. I play it in the same spot every single time, my normal ball position. Now I come in and I try to touch the ground before the flat ball and have the club miss the flat ball going over the top. So that would be rep number 1. And then I'll do one where I come down and I hit the top of the flat ball. So I hit the very, very top of it, and it kind of just pops up in the air and goes back down. So that'd be one. And if I'm not successful, if I come down and I hit behind it, then that's not successful. I'll retry it and do it again. And then I'll do another rep where I come down and I flush it. I get right at the turf and the ball in that flat ball at the same time. And then I'll do another one where I come down, I miss the flat ball, I hit the ground in front and come all the way through. So what that does is that really helps you to get a feeling of where your low point is and being able to control that, because that's really, really important, is being able to control that. Because that way, if you get a little bit off, you can make an adjustment very, very easily. I wouldn't get the flat balls and just try to flush it every single time. That's going to help you a little bit. But if you do some variability training with it and try to hit different parts of it, then it's going to help you the most. How it flies, when you flush it, you're going to notice it's going to kind of whiz through the air a little bit, and they'll go 20 yards or something like that. Maybe not quite that far, but they'll go at least 10 yards if you hit them solid. So, but how they fly and things like that, they're just it's kind of unpredictable because it's a flat little thing. If you think about hitting a Frisbee like you would hit a golf ball, how's that going to react? It's going to be unpredictable. So it just kind of whizzes through the air. You could hit it at the same time, the same way 7 times, and it'll do 7 different things. But I would just be more focused on the contact that you're getting with it. And that's the most important part, working with that. Bill F says, let me get a drink real quick. Bill F says, my long clubs are slowly getting more distance and consistency. My sand and gap wedges are losing a lot of distance. I can't seem to correct it. So what I would do is I just look at your swing. You got to film your swing. Take a look at your swing from face on and down the line, and look at the difference between a wedge swing and a long iron swing. So a lot of times what I see with people who really, really struggle with wedges, they can't hit their wedges very well. It's just that early release of the club. I talked earlier in this office hours about early release of the club and what that does and what happens with that. And that's a lot of times what we're seeing with the wedges. So take a look at your wedge game and see where you're releasing that club, because it's most likely you're just releasing it way, way too early, and you're adding loft to the face. So losing distance, you can lose a lot of distance with your wedges by adding a lot of loft. So, this is a 56-degree wedge. That's the static loft. So when that club is straight up and down, the shaft is straight up and down, the loft of this club is at 56 degrees. Where tour players are taking about 30% of the loft off of this face. So they're hitting this ball with 38, 37 degrees of loft. Well, if you're coming into impact and you're only de-lofting this face by 5 degrees or something like that, well, you're not getting much forward shaft. You're not de-lofting the face. You're hitting, there's about 4 degrees of gapping between every single club, right? So if a tour player's hitting a 56 degree with 37, 38 degrees of dynamic loft, meaning that's the loft that's delivered to the golf ball at impact, and you're delivering 48, 50 degrees of loft, well, that's 2 to 3 clubs that you're losing to that player. So you're hitting, they're hitting their 56 degree probably as far as you're hitting your pitching wedge or your 9-iron, if you're adding that much, if you're not de-lofting the club as much as them. So that's most likely what's happening. I'd look at where you're releasing the club and work on those pieces that I talked about. So the spine angles, lag, if you're not casting. A lot of times with wedges, we try to help the ball up in the air because we know it's a shorter distance. We want to help that ball get up in the air so it can go high and land soft. A lot of times I see that. So I would look at those pieces, the move, straight line release. All of those pieces are going to be the things that help you get that club to release out in front. So I'd definitely be looking at those. Mark K, it looks like he's got a correction on or a explanation for what is 1 o'clock means. So he says 1 o'clock for me means head is at 12 o'clock on the downswing, throwing out the club at 1 o'clock, A, you're finishing. Club to AA, you're finishing. So if my head is at noon, all right, so 1 o'clock would be here, would be 1 o'clock would be here. So I don't understand how you can release the club. You don't want to be releasing the club from 1 o'clock because that would be casting. So I'm still not quite, I'm sorry, I'm just not grasping what you're trying to ask. 1 o'clock would be here on the clock. If my head is at noon, 1 o'clock would be right here. So you don't want to be releasing the club from the top. There's nothing, if you're releasing the club from right here, that's casting. You don't want to be doing that because you won't be able to release the club out in front. You're going to basically have already be burnt up all your speed and released it too early. Mike N says, I thought we were supposed to tilt to the right before we swing. Should be tilt only with a driver teed up, but not with an iron. Am I right or am I wrong? So the most important, if you're talking about, spine angles, the most important spine angle is that one that's at impact. So that's really the most important thing. So 20 to 25 degrees, 18, 25 degrees, angled away, center of the hips, center of the shoulders when you're looking from face on. That's the most important. That's at impact. Now, we talk about in level 1 and level 2 being angled away at address and being stable to the top of the swing. If you're in that area, and that's what we see with most tour players, that's just going to make it easier to get into this position and theoretically, it can make you more consistent as well. So if you are set up straight up and down like this, you've got to move a lot to get to this position at impact. There's a lot of movement that's got to be going on there. Whereas if you're set up already angled away, and you're kind of already behind the golf ball, and you're getting up to the top, and you're in this stable angled away position already, that's going to make it easier to get to that position. So you definitely want to be I recommend being angled away at address. Now, if I have a student that's in that perfect position at impact, that 20, 25 degrees angled away position at impact, and they're straight up and down at address and straight up and down at the top, I'm not going to change a thing because they're getting in that position that I want them to be in. But if they're in a very, very vertical position at impact and they're vertical at address and leaning toward the target at the top, that's usually when it happens, when you have someone who's leaning toward the target at the top of the swing and then falling away and not getting into that position that you want in the downswing. That's usually when you see it, but that's the most important angle that you want to pay attention to. But yeah, getting in this angled away position at address, and that's with all clubs. You can be a little bit more with a driver, and the reason for it is because usually you're a little bit wider, right? You're a little bit wider with the driver a lot of times. You don't have to be, but a lot of people are. To each their own on that. I don't want you to think that you have to be wider or narrower with certain clubs, but in general, I like to be just a hair wider with the driver. It gives me a little bit more of a stable base to turn on. But that gets, and then the ball's a little bit further up in your stance. So automatically, if you're putting your hands in the same spot that you put them when you swing the club with all clubs, you're going to be more angled away a little bit just naturally. And that's completely fine. That's completely fine area to be in. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. But being a little bit more angled away with the driver is fine, and then a little bit less angled away with the irons is fine, or wedges. I find that typically when I'm setting up, I'm probably about 6 degrees angled away with my irons and wedges, and then with woods and my driver, I'm a little bit more angled away. I'm probably in that 9 to 10 degree range, being angled away. So that's what I'd be looking at on camera, but it's not important. The most important thing is being angled away at impact. If you're not in that angled away position that you want to be in at impact, like we talk about in level 3 of the stable fluid spine, then I'd be looking at level 1, level 2, and making sure that you're in those areas. It's just going to make it a lot easier for you to get there. And theoretically, because there's less moving around, you can be a little bit more consistent as well. But to answer your question again, in short, a little bit more vertical with shorter clubs is completely fine. Anywhere in that 6 to 8 degree range with any club is completely fine. But if you're 4 degrees or something like that, or even if you're straight up and down with a wedge, as long as you're getting into that good position at impact, it's completely fine. Mauricio R says, let me get a drink real quick. All right. So Mauricio R says, in the sand trap, in order to get more power, is it advisable to use lag in the downswing? So you will have a little bit of lag. The only difference with a bunker is that you're going to try to release that earlier. So you may not use your hips as much. The bunker game is going to be mostly arms, and that's to allow you to kind of flip the club and get it to release earlier. That's the only time you want that club to release earlier, is when you're in the sand, and that's so that you can use the bounce of the club. So the bounce right here, if you see this, when it's laying flat like that and you're releasing that club early, you're exposing this bounce to the sand, which is what you want to do because it acts as a rudder as it's coming through the sand. So if I have forward shaft lean and I'm hitting down into the sand, this thing's just, I'm not using any of the bounce. It's just going to dig into the sand and the ball's not going to go anywhere. So to get a little bit more power out of the sand, if you're having trouble getting the ball to where you need to go, it might be there's a couple things that may be going on. You might be taking way too much sand. If you're hitting a foot behind the golf ball in the sand, then you're just taking way too much sand. You probably don't want to take any less than 3 inches, probably no more than 8 inches of sand. So that's going to get you in that good area. Really depends on the kind of shot that you're trying to hit. If you're trying to hit kind of more like a chunk and run type shot, I'd be swinging really, really hard and hitting behind the ball, probably about 8 inches to get that ball to come out. It's going to be a high percentage shot. If you have a lot of green to work with and that you can get that ball to roll out, that's really, really good. But if you're wanting to hit kind of that spinny one, you want to take a little bit less sand, and depending on how far it is, swing less hard. But you always want to accelerate through the ball. So if you need more power, it's not necessarily going to come from getting lag, because you are going to be, some lag may help you to get a little bit more speed, but you may need, you don't have to use one club out of the sand. You can use a little bit more loft. Like myself, I carry a 50, a 54, and a 58 degrees wedges in my bag. So around the green, I usually use about a 58 degree wedge. I can hit a full blast shot, probably 35, 40 yards, I would say. But if I need more than that, let's say I'm on a par 5 and I caught one of those bunkers that are kind of not necessarily green side, but a little ways out where it's a huge bunker and I have a 50-yard shot. I probably won't use, I'll probably try to still hit a blast shot, but I might use my 50 degree so that when I open that way up, I can still use the bounce of the club, but I just have more loft, or sorry, less loft here so that it will drive the ball a little bit more and get it to go a little bit further. Yes, more lag can help you get more speed, more shoulder turn can get you more speed. Make sure that you're accelerating through it. That's one of the most common things is I just see people, they just don't accelerate through it. If you're doing all those things, then I would just use a wedge that has less loft. So if you're usually using a 60 or a 58, maybe use a 52 degree or a 50 degree or 54 degrees, or even use your pitching wedge if you absolutely need to, and just open up that face and hit it, try to hit it the same way. You know, even a pitching wedge has some bounce on it. Not as much as your normal wedges do, but they are going to have some bounce on that's going to allow you to hit those shots. So I just play around. Best way to do it is just to go practice with it. Hopefully you have a practice facility where you can go and practice those things and get good with it. Alan C says, when I miss a chunk, what is the most common cause of a fat shot? I would say it's typically bad weight shift, improper weight shift. People just don't get their weight to their lead side, so they hang back. That's the most common thing is I see they just don't get to their left side and they kind of hang back. So they're finishing on their back foot. That moves the low point back. That's the most common thing. I would recommend going to our stop chunking and topping section and working through there. That's going to help you to get a good weight shift to your lead side and allow you to make some much better contact moving forward. But yeah, there's all kinds of things that can happen. Early release of the club, but most often it's that weight shift. And I will say, you know, if you're looking for an instructor to take a look at your swing and to help you figure out what exactly is the the issue with the fat shots, we can narrow that down. Maybe you are getting a great weight shift. I can only tell you the most common thing. I can't sit here and tell you everything that causes a fat shot, because that I could literally go probably for days talking about that. I can tell you the most common thing, and that's that hanging back in the backswing, in the downswing. But if you're looking for that to get pinpointed, I would recommend going to our Unlimited Swing Reviews and checking those out. I believe I have spots available right now. Robin's got spots available. If you click Get a Review at the top of the page, but any page on the website, you can check those out and see who's available. And I would jump on it because the season's getting ramped up here. Going to be a lot of people looking for swing reviews, and we can only work with a limited number of students. So I'd recommend jumping on that before spots run out for sure. Mauricio R says, what adjustments should be made in a sand trap with hard sand? So with hard sand, you're just not going to be able to take as much sand. Because if you, a lot of times what happens if you hit too far behind the ball. So let's say you have beautiful, plush, perfect sand out of the bunker, and you are hitting a shot. You can hit, 8 inches behind that ball, accelerate through it, and the ball's still going to come out nice. If you're in hard sand, what's going to happen typically is that club is just going to hit that sand and it's going to bounce up and you're going to knife that ball out of there. So you got to come in there and kind of be able to time that out with the sand. So you're going to be more toward that 3 to 4 inch mark, getting underneath the ball and getting it out of there. So I'd recommend it's got to be just something that you practice and you work on. And I know it stinks playing out of sand that's hard, but keep in mind, I always tell people to keep this in mind that sand, going in the sand, you should be penalized for it. It's a hazard, right? You shouldn't be rewarded for going in the sand. I know tour players, they get the luxury of hitting out of perfect sand all the time. If they're playing really, really nice courses, it's nice sand. And a lot of times, especially if the rough's really, really thick around the green, it's actually better to be in the sand because it's easier shot to get out of there. But, you know, you got to keep in mind that it's a hazard. You don't want to go there on, you know, most, you know, situations. You just don't want to go there. Sometimes you just got to take your medicine and hope you can get it out of there. One thing I will tell you is that you can, if you just know it's not going to be any good and you have the opportunity to kind of putt it, you can putt it out of the sand, especially if it's really hard. It might be the best bet. If you don't have any really thick rough kind of in front of there and you can get the ball to kind of come out nicely, you can putt it out of there if you want. But I always recommend just trying to take a wedge. You just got to practice it, you know, and that's going to help you the most working on that. All right. So Bob B says, what is your thoughts on grip pressure? Light, 3, 4, medium? So this is kind of a loaded question. So the easiest way to answer grip pressure is that you want to be able to hold on to the club as lightly as you can and still be able to hold on to it. Now, you got to think about this. If I'm just at address, how lightly can I hold on to the club and still be able to hold on to it? I don't have to hardly hold on to it at all. I'd say it's like a 1 or a 2, right? But as I start bringing up the top, in order to hold on to that club, I've got to grip it harder, right? I have to. Otherwise, I'm just going to fall out of my hands. So that grip pressure gets firmer and firmer as you go up the top. And as you're starting down, it's starting to get firmer because the speed's picking up. And it's actually the firmest right here. You are tearing the grip off of this club at impact. I mean, that's the feeling that you should have in your lead hand here, is that you're just kind of ripping this thing off the club. That's what you should be feeling like. That's where the forces are the most. Because if you think about it, you're going to swing something a lot faster at impact, at the fastest point, if you can hold on to it. If you ever notice, like if you go and you play in the rain and your grips get really, really wet, you can't swing as hard or as fast because you don't have the traction on the golf club. Well, if you kind of the same thing's happening, if you try to hold this like a little tube of toothpaste or a baby bird or something like that, that I hear people say all the time, if you try to do that all the time at impact, that club's going to go flying, and you're not going to be able to swing it very fast. So you've got to increase that pressure as you're coming through there. You got to put force into the grip. This is your only connection to the golf club. So if you're not putting force into this handle, you're not going to be able to swing it very, very quickly. So that pressure changes throughout the swing. The easiest way to answer that is you grip it as lightly as you can, and so that you're still able to hold on to it. So at impact, you should feel like you're gripping onto this club about as tight as you possibly can, because you should be swinging it about as fast as you can. And that's, if it's not, if you're not holding on to it tightly, it's just going to fly out of your hand. So that's what I would recommend doing. There's also a great video on this on the website. If you search grip pressure, there's a crazy detailed video where Clay goes over every part of the swing, basically, kind of exactly what I just talked about. But I recommend checking that out as well. That's in the vault. If you're not sure how to get to the vault, well, first of all, you can search videos on the website. So let me go over that real quick. In the upper right-hand corner of the page, there is a search engine. It searches the website for videos, works really, really well. If you put in grip pressure there, you'll find the video on that. But honestly, you can't think throughout the entire swing how much, I'm a 2 here, I'm a 5 here, I'm a 7 here. You can't think about that throughout the swing. The easiest way to think about it is just don't try to death grip it throughout the entire swing. Don't try to, but it should be fairly light. It's picking up, and then it's really, really hard at impact. That's going to be the easiest way to think about it. But yeah, that search engine, search grip pressure or whatever else you want to look for, lag, shallow, you're going to find tons of videos on these things. If you just want to go to the vault section and kind of browse and peruse the videos, if you go to the instruction tab and go to the, if you go to instruction tab, hover the mouse over that, and then a menu will expand, and then you can go to vault categories, and that's going to take you. We have a crazy detail vault. There's vault category for lag, tour analysis, bunkers. There's all kinds of ones. I believe there's Mauricio. There's actually a video in there for hitting out of wet and hard sand, and basically goes over exactly what I talked about. But you'll be able to see a demonstration on a course, which is better than what I can do in my office here. So you may want to check that out as well. Keep on moving forward here. So Daniel S. said, I'd love to know the answer to the hard sand question below, but also would like to know a drill or two to perfect contact with iron. So yeah, Daniel, hopefully you got your question answered there. And I'd also check out that video I just mentioned. As far as perfect contact with irons, well, one, I'd recommend our ball striking masterclass. Tons of drills in there. If you're looking for a great main thing here is ground contact drills and face contact drills. So we're talking about the big four in the ball striking masterclass. Those are two of the big four right there. So for working on face contact, I'd recommend using some foot powder spray. You can get those at any pharmacy. Get some foot. I recommend Odor Eaters. It goes on really, really white. It's easy to see. I've heard of people using dry shampoo as well. I haven't used that, but that's another thing you can use. Actually, my favorite thing to do is to just get like a dry erase or a sharp or like a washable marker. And if you just take that and you put a heavy dot on the golf ball. So if I sit here and I put a heavy dot, I have a Sharpie. You can use a Sharpie too, but it's a little bit harder to get off the club face because it is a permanent marker. So you see I just put a heavy dot there. And what I'll do is I'll set up this golf ball to where that's going to impact that heavy dot as I'm hitting it. And then that's going to show me where I'm striking it on the face. So it's not going to rub off on there, but unless I really, really impact it. But then you'll be able to see where it is on there. Now, using this method with drivers doesn't really work unless you have a metallic face. Most drivers nowadays have a kind of a black face on them. That foot powder spray works the best for that. But this is what I like to use for irons and stuff because it just puts a little dot on there. It's not messy, kind of like foot powder spray is. It's just really, really easy to use. And you see it right there on the face. And that way you can go through the whole session and you can see where all your dots end up on the face. So that'll give you an idea where you're at, where you're getting the contact. And then from there, I would actually try to hit different parts of the club face. That's a really great drill. So a good kind of beginner drill would be, see where you're striking the ball on the club face. And then your first task would be to try to get that in the center of the club face. So let's say you hit 5 shots and most of them were kind of over here toward the toe. What you should do is you should actually try to strike the ball over here in the heel to move it to the center of the face. So I try to get a couple in a row that you get dead in the center. And then from there, I would actually intentionally try to hit different parts of the face. So I would try to hit some on the heel, try to hit some on the toe, maybe try to hit some low on the face, high on the face, trying to hit all kinds of different parts of the face on purpose. And that's going to give you an overall better awareness of the club face. These are the type of things that we do in the ball striking masterclass. Another great drill you can do for ground contact is you can take that foot powder spray again, and you can spray it on the grass, and that'll give you a nice line. And I would actually just take some swings because a lot of times what happens is that we'll hit a golf shot and maybe it was just an inch fat. And a lot of times you're not going to be able to tell when that's the case. But if you're setting that ball on that line and you're seeing that you're hitting an inch behind the ball, well, you're getting that instant feedback that knows. But if we don't have that line on the ground, a lot of times we don't even know if we hit it poorly or not. So you can practice kind of hitting the ball, hitting that line or a little bit after that line every single time, working on those. And you can do the same kind of drills, trying to hit 2 inches behind that line, trying to hit the line, and trying to hit 2 inches ahead of that line, and really trying to varying up those two, really, really controlling your ground contact. Earlier, I mentioned the flat ball. That's another great, I mentioned that flat ball drill. If you weren't here for that, go tomorrow, go and watch the archived office hours. And I talked about the flat ball and a great drill you can do with that. My favorite one to do with that to really, that's going to really, really help with your iron contact. But most of all, ball striking masterclass. That's what you're going to want to do overall to get a much better understanding and better contact with the irons. Charles V says having difficulty with the lag drill and actually keeping hands in front of the ball at contact. Any more ideas? So, well, lag is not at contact. Lag is up here, and it leads to better contact. So, what I'd recommend, you can have really, really great lag, but release the club early. That's other things that are going on there. The other thing is that I would just try all the different lag drills. So if you're working on a lag drill, let's say you're working on that stick behind the ball drill and you're putting in tons of time with it and it's just not working for you. You're just not having a good idea with it. Well, try a different drill. Not every drill is going to be great for everybody or work perfectly for everybody. There's a reason why we have probably literally hundreds of lag drills on the website. The reason is that not every lag drill works for everybody. If there was one drill that worked and gave everybody perfect lag, we would just have one video in the lag section. That'd be all you would do, and you'd be done. You'd have great lag, but it just doesn't work that way. I worked with a student. He doubled his lag. We worked on probably 3 different lag drills. The first 2 didn't help him at all, and then the third one that he worked on, it just clicked that day, and he went from casting the club like this to getting a ton of lag like that. He literally went. It was 94 degrees at this point in the swing, at this point in the downswing, to 47-degree angle. That's where he went to and from. So, and he gained 50 yards doing that. So, it's all about just try different drills. If something's not working, scrap it and try a different one and see if that one works better for you. There's tons of lag drill on the website. I'll just check them all out. I would make sure that I would focus on getting that lag first and then getting that release. Getting lag isn't necessarily going to lead to releasing the club out in front. So it's going to help you, because if you can't release that club early or cast the club and release the club out in front, you can generate lag and release the club early, and you can cast and release the club early. But releasing the club early does not go with releasing the club properly out in front. I've never seen it. It doesn't really happen because the momentum is already going, and you basically have no choice. The physics are going to be against you. Basically, you would really have to stop that from happening. So, about 7 minutes here. Don't have any questions on the board right now. Give you a minute here to get another one, but if not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today, and we'll be back here tomorrow morning. So yeah, this is your time to answer, to get your questions answered. We got about 4 or 5 more minutes here. 1 more minute to get another question up, and then otherwise we'll wrap it up for the day. This is always really awkward. Nobody's answering a question. No one's asking a question. So Charles V says that he's releasing the club early. So if you are generating lag and releasing the club early, well, you're good on the lag part. That's completely fine. So what I would recommend is kind of like what I talked about earlier is, number 1, let's make sure your spine angles are good. Make sure that you're angled away, because if you're not angled away, if you're pretty vertical at impact, you're gonna be basically you tend to release the club toward where your spine is pointing. So if you're vertical, you're going to be releasing that club at the ball. If you're more angled out in front, it's going to help you release that out in front. So make sure that you're rotated open, angled away from the target with the spine. Your lag is good. I'd make sure that you're shallowing out the club. So that's the move, right? So getting that club to shallow out, square up that face earlier so you can turn into impact and release that club out in front. If you're doing that, then that's going to help you. I just make sure that the move is good. Make sure that your spine angles are good. Number 1, spine angles. Number 2, I'd look at the move. Lag is good, and then it may be straight line release. Getting that straight line, get how your hands are delivering the club to the ball at impact. I'd look at that trail wrist. If that trail wrist at impact is pretty flat, meaning you're coming into impact and it's like that, it's pretty flat. That means you're pushing that club through with that right hand. You look at tour players, that thing's bent back. It's like that. So you got to get used to that feeling that it's releasing out in front instead of squaring the club face by going like that. So I would be taking a look at those pieces and working through those on the website. And again, if you want an instructor to pinpoint those things, I recommend joining our Unlimited Swing Review program. I believe me and Robin both have spots open right now. Click get a review at the top of the page, and we can get started here pretty quick. Douglas A says, arms and hands passive in the downswing, ? So this is a question that I get quite a bit often, or questions like this. Questions where somebody say, hey, am I feeling this? Is this passive, or is this a conscious movement? Am I actively doing this? And the answer to the question is it really just depends on you. Everyone's different. Everyone's feelings and things like that are different. So if you are, I guarantee you, tour players, they're not feeling arms and hands passive in the downswing. And that's because they're sequencing properly, right? So they're getting everything moving in the right direction. And then they're getting down here and they're firing as hard as they can. There ain't nothing passive about what they're doing. But if you're someone who's not using their lower body at all, and you're seeing on camera that your arms are just flying in front of your body, well, you need to get proper sequencing and get you to a point where you can be going hard at it. Because right now, if you're just swinging, going hard with the arms, everything's just flying out in front. You may need to feel more passive. So it's all about looking on camera, seeing what's going on camera, and then adjusting your feeling to get the desired result that you want. The feeling in my swing to give me the desired result is going to be different than the feeling in your swing, most likely, or Clay's swing, or Adam Scott's swing, or anyone else's swing, your buddy's swing. It's all going to be different. Because we all have different feels. So you got to look at the camera, see what's going on camera, adjust your feeling to get the desired result that you want, and then go from there. And then over time, those feelings may change, and you may be able to get to where you're sequencing better, and you may need to feel like you're really firing through a lot more to get what you want. So hopefully that helps. You want to know what my feeling is? That's a good question. So my feel is constantly changing. I feel like I'm going pretty hard with the hands, but I'm also more of an upper body swinger. I release the club probably a little bit more earlier than I should be. Something I've been working on for a while. I have a problem rotating my hips. So at impact for me, my hips are maybe about that open. But I do get the club to kind of work down the plane nicely. And I do have some good club head speed, but I do add quite a bit of loft to the face. I'm a pretty high ball hitter. And for me, if I'm playing a lot, I'm usually playing pretty well because my swing is more based on timing. But if I was trying to get to where I'm wanting to get this club to release more out in front, I'm still going to have that feeling of bringing my arms down much faster or coming down hard. But I'd be trying to get my lower body more involved so that I can use that momentum going through impact. But if you're someone who you see there's no legs being involved, and you're just flinging the arms out in front, you probably want to feel like you're more passive with your arms so that you can get your lower body more involved to make that happen. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'll answer one more question here. Bob B says, I am purposely trying to lessen my grip pressure through the strike to increase speed. It seems to give me an additional 10 to 15 yards of distance with my higher iron. So if you're trying to lessen the grip pressure, if that's the right hand that you're doing that with, that's good. And the reason for that is that actually your trail hand, they've done studies on this, and this is actually kind of a huge argument right now in the golf industry. All the golf scientists and golf instructors out there that have been talking about this, but probably one of the leaders in golf biomechanics, Sasha McKenzie, they did some research on this and basically found that the right hand's actually slowing down the club in the swing. So if you're pushing through with that right hand, I know it's kind of hard to think that that's what's happening, but they found that people who are kind of pushing through and casting the club through impact, there was more pressure on this part of the club. So they're coming through, the pressure was right here on this side of the club. So it's that back pressure. So it's pressure actually slowing down the club as it's coming through. Whereas with a tour player, where their sequencing is correct. It was more on the back part of the hand, and they're getting that club to release more out front. So if you are feeling like you're having less pressure, and maybe feeling like you have less pressure in general is giving you less pressure in this hand, which is helping you to not slow down the club as much as you're coming through. So that might be where you're getting a little bit more speed. It could be that you're releasing it's helping you to not release the club early, which is de-lofting the face and giving you a little bit more distance. So it could be some other things that are happening there, but there's a great video on the website about this light right hand. If you search light, probably, let me see if I can find the video real quick if you guys want to check it out. But I think it'd be a good video for you to check out for sure. And we'll finish up right after I find this video for you. Let me see. Let's try search right hand. I know the video I'm looking for. I just gotta find it. There we go. So G039. Why not to put pressure with the right hand? That'd be a great video for you to check out. I think it'll kind of lend into what you're thinking about. The left hand, well, meaning if you're right-handed, that lead hand, that's where you want that pressure. You create these first three fingers. That's where most of the pressure is going to be at in the golf swing. It's creating that fulcrum. You want to feel like you're ripping that grip right off the club with that hand. With that trail hand, you want it to feel pretty light as you're coming through there. You may even see some tour players, like I've even seen pictures of Phil Mickelson, where he's basically got his hand off of the club as he's coming through there. So I definitely check out that G039. I searched right hand and I found that video, G039. Why not to put pressure in the right hand? So thanks for everybody for joining me. I'll be back here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. So hopefully you can join me then, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.